Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Today, Sofia Smallstorm returns to the show. Sofia discusses the importance of our imagination and how it can enrich our lives to break free from the confines of traditional thinking. And so, without further ado, here's the conversation with Sofia. Well, folks, we have a great show, and the reason why I know this is because Sofia's back on the show. As we typically do, we pick one of her newsletters and we talk about it. And for this show, we're going to talk about the double issue, which was May-June of this year, 2019. And we're going to talk a bit about imagination. And so with that, Sofia, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. I'm very glad to be back because it has been a while. So let's do this in an enjoyable and expansive way.
Well, it was a great newsletter, and it's about how the imagination can be either our friend and good things can happen, but it can also be to our detriment if we don't use our imagination in the correct way. Is that a pretty good synopsis?
Well, Mike, of course, all this is open to interpretation. And when this happened, this was this newsletter that kicked off in me because I was going through some emails and I saw this thing John Rappaport sent out. I'm on his list. And I read it. I couldn't believe what I was reading, and I got very excited. And then the next day I read another one that he wrote that was similar, and I got even more excited because there were things contained in these newsletters that caused a shift in me. And if I get a shift, that's a big deal,
Yeah.
So one of the things he said in the first one I read, and I wish I could link to this imagination newsletter of his, but at the time his blog had been taken down by WordPress and he didn't really have a link. He was just sending out newsletters. So, I got his newsletter and I read it, and there was no link to that piece that I could find at the time. He talks about things that we don't normally consider, that when we look at the world around us, we can recreate it in a kind of fantasy way. For instance, the thing that really sticks in my mind is when you look at, for instance, when you're in a plane and you look below you and you see all the network of overpasses and freeways and roads as you're approaching a city, maybe approaching landing, he visualizes that in his example as spaghetti, and you can twirl the fork of your imagination into all those roads and pull them up and make them go in different directions. And if you said that to a normal three-dimensional thinking person, they would go, that's baloney. Well, I'm not even going to waste my time talking about that, right?
Yeah.
But what does it really mean? Rappaport says you're changing the elements. The contracted muscles of your mind relax and imagination takes over. There are no immutable laws. That, meaning the freeways that were laid out the way we all see them as roads, that was an illusion that held structures in place. If you disappear and reappear that illusion in a different way, you are exercising the muscles of your being entirely differently, even if it means nothing. He says, don't be in a rush to follow the beaten path. Turn A into B, B into A. You're walking on air. You're clanging clouds together and making horses run out of the chaos. You're transforming hope into certainty. You're strolling out of a dozen corners you've unconsciously painted yourself into. And that, to me, was very, very powerful. These corners that we've painted ourselves into because of this convention that's been handed down, which makes us feel incredibly shrunken and small.
We were given a set of variables which then made their way into beliefs and norms and stuff like that. And we walked that path. So in other words, we walked the path that they tried to put us on. Now, some people don't walk that path, but many, many people do. And when you're on that path, you're actually constricting and constraining your imagination. You're constraining and suppressing your ability to be imaginative, to create. So when we look at things that are all around us, and we listen to the things that are told to us or shown to us, that actually shuts down our ability to expand the mind, expand consciousness. So essentially what it does is it kind of traps us into a small space. And if you do it long enough, then what happens is that indeed becomes your world.
Well, of course, Mike, and I'm going to quote Rappaport, so none of this is my genius. And maybe I will pop up with something unique of my own in a few minutes. So he says that we live in all these structures, right? We have a dimensional structured world that has all these structured conventions. The one quality that sits outside that whole structure of structures is imagination. It can go anywhere and do anything. And then he says, every person starts out with a certain amount of, what should we call it, territory, inner territory. There is a much greater amount, but he's not conscious of it. He can become conscious through imagination. He invents the rest of himself, and that process is forever. Now, I'm just going to add a little more. This is all Rappaport, who I think is a genius, by the way. Face it, society is built to take care of people who live half lives. There are lots of short-term solutions to problems, but they disintegrate because the other half remains in the dark. And then it hit me that the other half of our life is the unexplored half, the half that is hidden, the half that waits in silence while we obey orders and convention in the quote-unquote active half.
That's right. That's right. I've said this too many times on shows that in a different way, but it's the same concept where we sub-optimize our lives. The football field's 100 yards and most people play on 50 yards of it. They never bother to venture into the other 50 yards, right, to play the whole field. So I think that that's maybe what John was alluding to, or what he was writing about, that we essentially we don't optimize our lives because we fall into what I was mentioning before. We fall into these traps of accepting the world or the reality as it's presented to us versus us creating our own reality. These boundaries are put in place, but they're artificial boundaries that are given to us. We can venture outside. In other words, we can leap that fence. And when we do that, other opportunities open up, other views open up, and you can get a lot of fulfillment out of life if you can just open the aperture a little more.
Right, and then people will say, but how do I do that? So he says here, consciousness wants to create new consciousness, and it can. Imagination is how it does it. If there were some ultimate state of consciousness, imagination would always be able to play another card and take it further. And then this really hit me. Imagination can be used to invent a better shade of nail polish or a universe. In a society devoted to nail polish, imagination is not to blame. And that's where we are. We live in a society devoted to making better shades of nail polish, more shades of nail polish, right?
Right.
So I'm going to give an example from my own life. And I can't say that I consciously did any kind of exercise. By the way, Rappaport's series that you can buy if you go to his website, it used to be nomorefakenews.com, but his book series is Exit from the Matrix, his Matrix book series. You really have to look up Rappaport, Exit from the Matrix. And I urge people to spend the $125 and get the whole shebang. I mean, everything, the audio, the books, because I'm going to get it. So I was reading this Rappaport stuff, and again, I didn't put these two things together, but I was also doing some cleaning up in my patio. I have this collection of cactus. They're in different little pots, and I'm trying to grow them. There are people who make the most beautiful cactus displays. There's all different kinds growing out of a pot, and it looks gorgeous because they come in all different shapes and shades. So here I was. I had this horrible planter that I bought at Home Depot years ago. It's just an impulse buy. It had some straw and stuff in it, and it contained cactus, and now all the cactus that was in it was looking terrible. And I decided, all right, I'm going to clean this thing up. But right before that, I had wanted in my kitchen to somehow get a hold of a container, like a wire basket of some kind, to put lemons and avocados in to ripen, because the one I had rusted. So I decided to throw that one out, and I said, what can I get? And I was thinking of something that was black, and it was, made of metal. It had wires widely spaced. I didn't want like a colander that looks like it belongs in the cupboard. I'd never seen any such thing. And I thought, well, where am I going to find this thing that is in my imagination, right? I mean, how am I going to, maybe I should make one, but I didn't want to sit there with wire and, clippers. So I just put the thought aside and said, someday, maybe I'll go in the thrift stores or I'll look online, but I've never seen, not in any kitchen store, Williams-Sonoma, any of this catalog stuff. I've never seen this thing that I want. So when I went outside a couple of days later and I picked up this scraggly planter thing from Home Depot and I pulled it apart and I chucked the straw stuff, I saw, oh my God, inside was this wire basket, intact. It had been outside for like 10 years, Mike, and it didn't have any rust, nothing. It was as clean as a whistle. It was exactly what I had pictured in my mind. It was like 8 inches in diameter, and it was shaped like a, little bowl kind of thing. And I went, this is it. This is what I want. It's been outside my kitchen in the patio for years, and now I found it because I had the thought to clean up some stuff. So I didn't know. All right. Did I create this? Was my imagination something that gave something form? What else could I say, right? What would you say?
Well, first of all, I'm a firm believer in synchronicity, and also a very firm believer in, as part of synchronicity, that your thoughts create your reality, and your imagination is part of that process of thought. And so your reality is not set in stone. You can change things. And you can change things just by the sheer fact that you can use your imagination and thought, and you can create, and things can happen in your life, very positive things, just like very negative things can happen if your thought and your imagination are in negative places. We spoke before the show, and I said there's an old saying that worrying is praying for something that you don't want to have happen. So with worrying, you're using your imagination because you're projecting and thinking about worst case scenarios, what could happen that's going to be negative and stuff like that. And people who worry a lot because they're focused on it so many times, that's what they're putting out there. And so that's what's going to come back. The universe is very neutral, right? It's like, okay, well, it seems like that's what you're asking for. So, here you go. So in your case, when you're looking for that basket and you're putting that out there, it doesn't happen overnight many times. It could take time, but what you're looking for, what you're projecting will come back to you in some shape or form. And it's up to us to be able to identify when it rolls up on our doorstep and knocks a little bit. So your story about the basket, I see that stuff all the time. Those types of things happen in my own life. And it is hard to talk to people about because a lot of folks, they just chalk it up as woo-woo stuff and new age mumbo jumbo. For me, I look at it like you do, that this is actually how reality works. You can create your own reality.
So now I'm going to segue into a couple of other parts of this newsletter. Number one, yes, as soon as I understood that imagination could take quote unquote reality and contort it and make anything happen, like my little basket story,
right, I
realized that when you fear and worry and dread, you're actually using your imagination against yourself. And you know it. Oh, this is a bad thing that could happen to me. But here you are thinking about it and worrying about it and dreading. So you're actively employing imagination against yourself. And that was a big realization. I went, gosh, how many people are constantly worried, including myself. I can worry a lot too. And what are you doing? You are employing. You're saying, imagination, come here. I'm going to put you to work. Now I want you to just dream up the most awful things that could happen and keep plugging them into my mind so that I can be scared out of my wits about tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. So is this what you're going to do with this capacity that Rappaport says we have that can do outrageous things? So I then realized dreams. Rappaport says reality needs a massive injection of imagination. In a society devoted to nail polish, imagination is not to blame. And then I was thinking about dreams. I mean, really everybody dreams. Even the people who say they don't remember their dreams, you are dreaming. And what happens in your dreams? There are no rules. It's a wacky world, right?
Right.
And I decided dreams are a way of resetting our capacity to imagine. And thank God we do it for 8 hours a night. We do spend a long time in wacky world. Even though we dismiss it when we wake up, and most of the time we forget the dreams, we don't remember them. But dreams may be a form of imagination being let loose when the controlling mind is off duty. And seriously, maybe dreams are a way of freeing us from this collective lowest common denominator, from this daytime obedience to the status quo. Maybe they're a built-in system by which we switch our creativity back on, because all day we participated in this boring shuffle, this daily mundanity, this daily squelching of the other half of ourself. But that half comes to life when we dream. So it might be a very healthy thing to have this dreaming capacity. Because, I mean, it's almost like opening the window and getting some fresh air instead of living in a stuffy room. So, quoting from Rappaport, his book is Exit from the Matrix. So I term dreams imagination restoration. Rappaport says, there are 1 billion murals on 1 billion walls. That's the possibility of anything, right? Anything and everything, all spaghetti, 3 ways twisted on a fork of imagination. 1 billion murals on 1 billion walls, and yet a person chooses one and falls down before it and devotes himself to it. He spends 1,000 years trying to decipher it. That's the one reality that we're all asked to perceive and pledge to and operate in.
No, that's right. And going back to dreams, Sophia, dreams are very important. I've always viewed dreams as sort of a clearinghouse process when we go to sleep at night. It's the subconscious mind trying to sort through things, and also dreams are telling us things. So there are a number of very good books out there for dream interpretation. And if you're able to remember your dreams, write them down as soon as you can. And there's a lot of symbolism. And the symbols that you have in dreams, you might be flying, you might be sitting under a tree, and the tree means something, or you might be in a rowboat. The rowboat will mean something. So they're very, very important. And people who don't take them seriously and just don't give them another thought, you make a very good point. We sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, so I view it as another reality that we go off into.
Yeah, Mike, I think, and I'll say it again, that whether you remember your dreams or not, whether you dismiss them as wacky world, they are a reset. They are a restoration of your imaginative capacity. And Rappaport said in one of these emails, and I'm really only quoting 2, that the deployment of imagination unlocks hidden energies. A power sought after and never found in other endeavors appears. So now, if dreams are wacky dreams are the resetting of the capacity to imagine, because the body goes, all right, you don't imagine during the day, let's do it at night when your mind is turned off, when that authoritarian, very heavily trained and conditioned mind is switched off. We're going to dream. The deployment of all that crazy stuff in dreamland unlocks hidden energies. What if that were true? Isn't this powerful to contemplate that you are given the opportunity for 7 to 8 hours a night to reset, to restore your imagination, to unlock hidden energies, which wouldn't be otherwise available. So I am thinking dreaming is, after my entire life of trying to figure out why do we dream, this is now what I think is the reason that we dream. And I'm going to tell another story from my life. So when I was little, I went to Catholic school, and I had to go in a uniform, and there were nuns, and they were huge. I would look up at them. We had to sit at these tiny little tables and chairs. I was very, very young. And these nuns would rustle by us, and they had these robes, and they had black shoes on their feet. And I knew that they were bald. They shaved their heads. I couldn't figure that out, why they did that. My mother told me they did that. And sometimes I could see that they were shaving their heads, and I thought that was very crazy. But anyway, so this was my school, right? Now this is about as rigid as you can get, to put small children at small tables having to listen to these nuns. Okay. I mean, they were nice, but I can't remember a single thing I learned from them. But then one day when I came home, I remember my mother had this sewing room, and she had a file cabinet in it by the opposite wall from her sewing machine. And there was a drawer open in this file cabinet. And I think I was even shorter than the file cabinet, not much taller. And I just walked up to this drawer, and I pulled on it, and it came out. And the whole thing crashed down on my big toe. I don't remember the pain at all, but I do remember that toe got really ugly and dark and crusty looking, and the nail came off. And I was horrified. And my mother said, "Don't worry about it, you'll get another nail." And I couldn't believe this. And I watched this nail growing back on my foot. And it seemed totally wondrous to me. And so I asked in my newsletter, I said, the toenail coming back was the result of a hidden energy. At 4 years old, I had no other way to think about it. I didn't use the term hidden energy, but I knew that there was something in my body that was doing something miraculous that had nothing to do with nuns, the alphabet, books, papers, my parents. So what was more wondrous to me, do you think? The experience of books or my toenail?
Your toenail is the regeneration of a part of your body, right? So, of course, it's the toenail.
Right. And maybe that's where I got my appreciation of all the stuff I study now. All the scientific stuff. I don't really know. But I still think that we are lucky that we dream. And then I want to go into it's like a pre-dream state. And once I brought this up to other people, when I found out that there was a name for it while I wrote this newsletter, a lot of people told me they have the same thing. And I think this is another bending of the rules. But this actually floats into your conscious mind because there is a transition period. Have you had this, Mike?
Yes.
Every night as you're falling asleep, there's just a few moments of, they call it pre-dream time, they call it sleep onset. The scientific word for it is, I hope I'm saying it right, hypnagogia. And it is a period, for some people, they just see kind of like very vague images, sometimes flashes of light. But in my case, and this has happened for years, I see actual scenes. I'll see the face of a cat, and then it will shift into a statue in a museum, and then it will turn into it looks like a firework, and then it becomes something else. And I'm following this going, what's going on? What am I looking at? And sometimes I hear conversations where people are chatting. I don't know these people. I hear voices, and they're saying things that make complete sense. And I was thinking, does this only happen to me? But now, no, it happens to a lot of people. Images. Sometimes you hear these very loud, explosive sounds, and that has happened to me, where I think that something fell in the house. You'll hear loud beeps. I thought once or twice that I was being targeted. This was like mind control, EMFs targeting me. But it's not. It's all part of this hypnagogia. So tell me what you get when you have this happen.
I have the same thing, and I've had it all my whole life. So it's that in-between state I have had full visions of places. I mean, it's a snippet, but I could see it with clarity. Voices, yes, speaking, and not gibberish, actual sentences being spoken. It's a very interesting place to be. So, yeah, when I read the newsletter and I got to that part, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I know folks, too, that have it. So I think everybody has it.
It's very, very wonderful and magical. And I'll tell you this, there's something called the Tetris effect, which is part of the hypnagogic state. It's a residual feeling from a daytime experience. And people who, for instance, have spent the day skiing will feel the snow under their feet. My first swims in the ocean for the summer, I feel the bobbing. When I go to sleep, I can feel the bobbing. People who've been on a trampoline, spending a lot of time, they can feel the up and down motion. So that is called the Tetris effect. There are famous people, who have recorded that the hypnagogic state has infused them with a big breakthrough. For instance, Beethoven, Wagner, Walter Scott, Salvador Dali, Thomas Edison, Tesla, Isaac Newton, they've all credited hypnagogia with breakthroughs. One of the biggest ones is this guy that I hadn't heard of, August Kekule, Kekule. He was dozing in front of a fire, and he had a hypnagogic Big Bang, which was that the structure of benzene was a closed ring. I mean, I'm sure this is very important, right, to science, but it's very odd. So what has happened to me lately, and I'm really happy that I can do this, I have taken pains to listen closely to what happens in hypnagogia, even though it's only a few minutes. And when I hear a comment, an analysis, from whatever this inner voice is, or voice that I can't even connect with anybody I know, and it makes sense, I go, wow, that's good. And I wake up a little more. Sometimes I write it down. And then I go back, and now I can extend hypnagogia. I can have it 3 or 4 times as I fall asleep, rather than only one time and have everything fly away, slip away. So I'm training myself to do this hypnagogia and extend it and repeat it and get something out of it. Because again, it's that your real mind is shutting down, and now something else is coming in. And there might be people who are heavily religious who think this is all satanic, right? But I think since so many people share this experience, and some have simply just the light things, and some they can hear music, and other people, I get full-on commentaries. And they seem to be made by very sensible people. So I like that. But all I can say is this is a kind of lucidity. It's being provided by you, by another form of reset in your mind. You could call it a brainstorm. And you can benefit from it because the rules are shutting down now. You can see and understand something. Usually they're contextual, these hypnagogic states. They relate to you. So anyway, one of the things that happened to me while I was writing this newsletter in my hypnagogia state, and I was thinking about imagination as I was falling asleep and how to create solutions that were not as, how can I say it, hard-edged and limited in their scope as what seemed to be possible. Like, okay, this is all you can do. These are your choices, A, B, C, D. I wanted to figure out, how do I create solutions that are more interesting and more flexible? And hypnagogia told me this. I swear to you. It said, do you want to be a fairy or a battering ram? And immediately I grabbed that and I said, wow. I said, you can invent solutions fairy style or battering ram style. And if you choose to be the nimble fairy, not to go rushing off into tomorrow with this big old battering ram attitude, then something really amazing might happen, because now you're working out of your reset capacity.
Well, this whole process, Sophia, for me, the way I define it is we're in expanded consciousness. That's where we're at. We've widened the frequency. And so by expanding that frequency out left and right, we have access to information and wisdom and advice and whatever that in our normal waking state that we typically are not plugged into. The other thing I wanted to mention was in a dream, going back when I was working on my second album, I had a very, very lucid dream, and I was in that dream and I was playing guitar. The day before, I was working on this song and I was just, I just couldn't get it right. I knew I wanted it to sound a certain way and I was having trouble. And I had this dream and it was just as clear and as real as you and I talking right now. And in that dream, I was playing this song and it was showing me my hands on the guitar. It was showing me what it is I was playing. So I woke up and I remembered everything from the dream. I remembered exactly where my hands were and what I was doing. So I thought to myself, well, that was very strange, so let me go test this out and see what it sounds like. So I plugged the guitar in and I play exactly what was shown to me in the dream. And there it was. There was the song. And it was one of the most amazing things to me. When people say, well, things come to us from outside in for a lot of creative people, it does happen. The dream state and the hypnagogia phase or trance state that we're in right before we go to sleep, all of that stuff is real. And the other thing is all that stuff is important. A lot of this gets downplayed. It's not talked about. It's not discussed. Science says, oh, we haven't figured it out yet and stuff. But I come from the school of thought that everything in life that we do, that our body does and our mind does, is important. The Creator didn't put us together so that we can have just nonsense stuff going on with our mind and body, So there's my little story.
No, that's a great story. I'm very glad that happened for you. And once again, because it happened in a dream, this is wacky world imagination reset time. And when you use your imagination, even if it's only in dreams, that unlocks hidden energies in you. This is the other half of you that's being shrunken. In fact, it could be that we are compressed so much in our daily lives that we're not even just using half. We might only be using 1/4 of our capacities or less. I mean, it could be a really small fraction. So the fact that you can actually deploy the rest of it, I think, Mike, it's only a matter of putting your appreciation on the fact that you're dreaming every night, that your body is actually saying to you, look, I bring you into a different house, a house of no rules, a house of anything is possible.
Right.
And we do it every day. So be grateful. And if you just appreciate that, you could, as Rappaport says, you are building one new thing. All you have to do is build one new thing. So build this appreciation of what's already in you, that you have this time, that you are resetting. I mean, it's pretty cool, right?
It's all part of our ability to go inward. So we have to do our inner work. So which means we have to recognize that we have these abilities within us. Most people look outside of themselves for inspiration and for advice and counsel and wisdom. They don't understand that they have it within them to be able to answer the questions that they have, or to overcome obstacles, or to create via the imagination. So, I mean, the way the culture and the society works is they want us to go outside. They want us to go to an authority, to ask questions and be told how things are done. When in reality, a true reality, not the virtual reality that's handed to us, our true selves, our true reality, we don't need that. All we need is ourselves.
Yeah, Mike, you could put it this way, that what we think are our options, which we often believe to be very narrow, offered to us by convention or what lies outside, that is so poor compared to the possibility of creating options from within. And I'm trying to think of the most rational people I know. They are not able to see it this way. Absolutely not. I have a friend, for instance, who's looking for a job now, and he's in a bad state. He's really run out of what we would call options. So he's on these job search boards, and he's looking for anything. I mean, he'll take anything at this point, and he's not getting results. So I said to him recently, well, why are you operating from that place? Why don't you operate from a space of your druthers? If you had your druthers, what would you want? And he said, well, because I don't really. And I said, yeah, but you could think that way, right?
Right.
And I would like him to be a guinea pig in this regard for me. And he said, okay, I'll try to think that way today. And why not? I mean, it's free. It just takes a few minutes. Why can't you think, okay, if I really wanted a great job, this is what it would be. It would be in this place, maybe a different state, instead of just trying to work out what is available to you based on what you already have. And once again, if you don't employ your imagination freely, then all you're doing is pointing yourself at what's narrow and what you really don't like.
Very limited options. That's what's presented to you. And, for your friend, the way he should look at it, or he or she, is it could do no harm. You can continue doing the things that you're doing, but you can also incorporate this other method of doing things into your thinking process and into your life and see what happens. But most people, they just don't believe that stuff works. And they just follow the traditional, conventional methods. I was having a conversation yesterday with a young person, late teens. She was very concerned about what her options are in life. What kind of job am I going to have? Am I going to make enough money? And she was doing very similar things, looking down traditional, conventional paths and coming up empty. And the big reason is because that's not what she wants to do. That's not where her heart is at. That's not what inspires her. And so I had a conversation with her yesterday, and I said to her basically the same thing that you told your friend. Open it up. Think differently. Really go in and what is it that you want to do? What inspires you? What makes you want to go off and wake up every morning and say, yeah, I want to go do that. That's going to make me happy or whatever. So that's a piece of the puzzle that a lot of folks don't incorporate into their lives. They don't incorporate it into their thinking. And so, like you said before, we're not even sure people are playing half the field. Maybe it's a quarter of the field. And you're playing half or less of the field if you go along the traditional, conventional paths, because they're designed to do that. They're designed to cut you short of your full capabilities. They're designed to keep you from optimizing your life. So if you go down that path, that's what's going to happen. You're not going to play the full field. Now, Sophia, in your newsletter, the other half of it is about Alex Honnold. I hope I'm pronouncing Alex's name correctly, Honnold. He had a very, very interesting story to tell, and you actually help us to understand his story in a newsletter. So I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
He is known as the world's most amazing free solo rock climber. I was in the dentist's chair, and I was waiting for some anesthesia to work, and my dentist has to inject me a couple of times because I'm like the princess in the pea. I can feel everything. So I had National Geographic, and I was reading it, and here is this article. The issue was, I think, 2017, and then they did another article, June 2017 and October 2018. So they were reporting on this young man called Alex Honnold, and he had just free soloed El Capitan's most dangerous face. So El Capitan is this large rock mass in Yosemite National Park, and this face of it, I think it's called Three Rider. It is 3,000 feet of granite wall, and it's almost straight up, straight vertical. And he used no ropes and no safety gear. This is called free soloing. You're all by yourself, and you've got rubber shoes on, rubber-toed shoes. I think they're very flexible shoes. and you've got a bag of chalk tied to your waist. And that's it. You use your fingers and you smash and smear your rubber-toed shoes against the granite, and you're using these finger holes that are literally the size of wrinkles in cloth. And you're pulling your body up the granite for 3,000 feet with no ropes to help you or to catch you if you fall, no safety gear, nothing. And it took him 3 hours and 56 minutes. He started at 5:30 in the morning to avoid being, fried by the sun. And I read this article in National Geographic. It's available online. And I bought his documentary, Free Solo, and his book, Alone on the Wall. And I just was gobbling all of this up. More than the imagination saying, someday I'd like to free solo that, he had to use his will. And this is another part of us that we leave it out in the cold. We don't incorporate will. Will, you could call it intention. We don't use it nearly to the degree that we could. So let me explain something about Alex Honnold that will probably be surprising to a lot of people. Alex Honnold was painfully shy as a child, horribly shy. He grew up in Northern California. He wore sweatpants to school every day, gray or navy, with a hoodie, and the hood was always up. And he didn't engage with other children. He always knew the answer if he was called on. And at 10, his father took him to a local climbing gym that had opened up, because I think this became the trend in, you see them in malls and things, the climbing gyms, right? So he was taken to a climbing gym and he started to learn how to climb, and then he wanted to go and really climb on rock faces, but he was too shy to ask others to come with him as a teenager. So he just did it alone, right? So what is shyness? I started analyzing this. Shyness is fear. You're afraid of people. He was afraid to engage with people, but less afraid to engage with the rock wall by himself and deal with the dangers and the consequences. So I was impressed by how much Alex not only trains, the way you train to climb something like Free Rider, there are pitches. Pitches are sections of the climb. Let's say there are 60 pitches or 100 pitches, sections, right? And you don't go straight up. Sometimes you'll swing your leg to the side and you'll pick up a little tiny foothold, and then you'll swing your body in the direction that your leg went, and you'll start elevating yourself along the wall. So that might be called a pitch. And they name these pitches. The other climbers who do it, most people did it with ropes. They call them the ear, Teflon corner, lung ledge, the boulder problem, right? So what Alex did was he practiced the pitches over and over and over and over till he had them all memorized. He had this entire 3,000-foot climb dialed down in his mind. He knew exactly where he had to put his fingers on this one part. I mean, it's like memorizing, 20 pages of music and then playing it on the piano or the violin or whatever, just committing it all to memory. So Freerider, I'm now confirming, it has 30 pitches, and it is so difficult that even in the last few years, it's been newsworthy when a climber was able to get to the summit using ropes. I'm quoting now from National Geographic. It's a zigzagging odyssey that traces several spidery networks of cracks and fissures, some gaping, some barely a knuckle wide. Along the way, Honnold squeezed his body into narrow chimneys, tiptoed across ledges the width of matchboxes, and in some places dangled in the open air by his fingertips. And just reading about this, Mike, I swear to you, I would have to put the book down and get out of bed and wash my hands because my palms were so sweaty. I mean, this whole thing gave me the heebie-jeebies, and then I would have this creepy feeling in my feet as well. And I'm not afraid of heights. It was just, I was putting myself in his shoes, and it was giving me the jitters. The true test for Honnold was whether he could maintain his composure alone on a cliff face hundreds or thousands of feet up, while executing intricate climbing sequences where positioning a foot slightly too low or high could mean the difference between life and death. Elite climbers have pointed to Honnold's unique ability to remain calm and analytical in such dangerous situations, a skill that he has slowly developed over his 20 years of climbing. So that's what was amazing to me, that he has this ability to remain calm, focused, to stay perfectly balanced, to maintain enough forward momentum to avoid sliding off this granite wall. And he says it's like walking up glass. Tell me how that strikes you as a human being.
Well, it's an amazing feat. When I was reading the newsletter, and I wasn't reading his book like you were, I was getting similar feelings. I was thinking to myself, wow, you've got to be kidding me. Especially when he said it was like climbing glass. But one of the things that caught me was people would say that he was fearless. And one of the things that Alex said was, no, I have fear. What he was saying is when I have that fear, or if I have a doubt or I'm questioning, he was saying that was the day I didn't do it. I knew enough to know that if I had these types of feelings creeping in, it would have to be another day. And that he would sit in his van and he would play through, I guess he would play through all the moves and all the maneuvers and everything he had to do in order to make the climb successful. So it is a tremendous level of discipline, not just to climb the mountain or the rock, but discipline also to know when is a good time to do it and when is not a good time to do it, right? So I guess what I'm saying is he's just not this daredevil. He's somebody that is very disciplined and very structured in when it is he's going to do something. But when he does do it, he's going to give it everything he has and he's going to come out on top. He's going to be very successful. That's what I got out of the story.
Mike, I think you're exactly right. And that's not a way that I had looked at him before. So thank you. He is really in tune with his full being. Okay, that's how I'm hearing what you're saying. And from National Geographic, I learned that there are other climbers in his league physically, but no one else has matched his mental ability to control fear. So, by the way, I want to throw in here a little discovery of mine. I think it's unique to me. I took his last name, Honnold, Honnold, and I realized it rearranges, it's an anagram for Holden On, Holdnon, and this is what he does best, right? I couldn't believe it. I got very excited. I even wrote to him on his website. I said, please let me know if I'm the first person to point this out, but I just can't get enough of, give you enough admiration and kudos on what you do, but here's your name. It's Holden On. So, yes, he sits in his van. The time that he lived in his van for many years. I mean, this guy is not into ostentation and material stuff or anything. And now, lately, since he's been so famous, he has been sponsored by, the North Face and all kinds of sports companies, and people make documentaries about him all the time. So he has greater earning capacity than he ever did before, but he's still not even materialistic. And I think he channels his profits into all kinds of he has his own foundation. You can look it up, Alex Honnold. But anyway, so he was contemplating in 2008 to climb Moonlight Buttress in Utah. And so part of his preparation, as you say, it was a rainy day. He went to a movie, and then he went to his van in the parking lot, and he stared out the windshield and thought. And he said, the rest of the evening and through most of the second day, I sat in the van just thinking, because it was raining out. It's not like I had work to do. I didn't have anything to do except think about the climb. Sitting and thinking hour after hour, visualizing every single move, everything that could possibly happen. So now he's employing the drastic things as well, those possibilities. That's what it takes to wrap your mind around a challenge such as the one I was about to attempt. That's what I mean by preparation. Now I'd find out if I was prepared adequately. If I could simply execute what I had visualized, every handhold and foothold along the way to the top of the wall. And I was quoting from his book, Alone on the Wall. So he rehearsed, he prepared, he visualized everything that could happen. And he says, as you mentioned, if he feels afraid while he's approaching something like this, he's not under any obligation to do this. So he either puts in the time preparing in this very full way, or he just doesn't do it. And there are days when he just bails. He'll start a route and it'll be a couple of 100 feet off the ground, and he'll say, nope, I don't want to do this today. So he says, a healthy hope of survival. He doesn't want to die, but by the same token, he has to be endlessly rehearsed. And I was thinking, okay, we can't live life that way. We cannot endlessly rehearse for every possibility, and because we don't know what's going to happen. In his case, he's going from X to Y, from the bottom to the top. He's practiced it many times, and he has to know every possible little crevice where he puts every finger, thumb, all that. But it was the idea of doubt that got me. As you continue to read his book, he talks about the idea of doubt. And there was one climb that he did where he made it, but he didn't do it as capably and as doubtlessly as he wanted to. And so doubt had crept in. And he said, I was hesitant and afraid, and it wasn't the experience I wanted. So I realized that having doubt is a contaminant. It not only undermines your confidence, but it also prevents you from fully enjoying the experience. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, that when you live your life and you carry this suitcase of doubt around everywhere, you are ruining your own experience of whatever you're doing.
That's right. Doubt usually results, if you major in it, in self-sabotage. You'll keep yourself from being successful. You're having some doubt, is perfectly normal and is healthy in a lot of ways, because it can keep you from doing something that could hurt you. So in the case of Alex, right, what I got out of the story was that he really has mastered like his mind-body integration, and his ability to, going back to what we were talking about before with imagination, he's able to imagine the climb, the moves that he has to do. And with that comes the discipline, like the entire package, all of him, mind, body, and that's what makes him very, very successful. But too much doubt, like people who harp on it and worry, like we were saying before, Sophia, it will sabotage you. It will keep you from being successful. It will keep you from optimizing your life and feeling fulfilled.
He says doubt is the precursor to fear. And I knew that I couldn't experience my perfect moment if I was afraid. I had to visualize and rehearse enough to remove all doubt. And that really registered with me. Doubt is the precursor to fear. Fear is the deployment of imagination against yourself. And if you are rehearsed enough to remove doubt, then you haven't opened the door to fear.
Correct.
And he's really big on this perfect moment. He wants the successful climb to be a perfect achievement. And whatever perfect means to him, it means it to him. I have a different view of perfect. You have a different view of perfect. But to him, when he can do something really difficult that he has imagined and that he has trained and rehearsed for, and that he does it without the component of doubt, then he has a perfect experience. And that's not asking a lot. He's not, imposing on anybody else. He's just pulling from within himself. He's pulling, maximum performance, doing something that I don't think anybody in the world would try to do, because no one has. He wants a certain kind of experience, and it doesn't include doubt, because when he does have the accomplishment, when he can summit, they call it getting to the top, is called when he summits something, but he had doubt, it's not a good experience. It's a bad experience. There was a crag in Mexico that he also wrote about called The Shining Path, in English, El Sendero Luminoso. And in his book, he says it is covered with vegetation. And the base material is this crumbly gray limestone. And you can imagine the doubt that that kind of a surface would create in you. He says, Alex, holds just break off unexpectedly. You have to trust that the one time you hold it is not the time it rips off the mountain. Now that is scary. Most people would say, what? I'm not doing this. But he said, I just want to read this. To me, soloing at its finest is to be nearly disconnected from the wall with the air all around. There's a certain purity to that kind of movement that can't be found with a rope and gear. But for all my love of simplicity, it's not always simple to get into those positions. Here on Sendero, everything came together, a perfect mixture of aesthetics and challenge, hard enough climbing to demand total concentration and commitment on a line of strength that goes straight up to the biggest face on the massif. I think that's how you say it. From there to the top, I climbed easily, trusting my feet more with each step. I used new sequences on a few pitches, trusting myself to find the easiest way through the seemingly blank sea of limestone. On the midway ledge, I popped my shoes off, and again 5 pitches higher, just to let my toes relax after hundreds of feet of technical slab climbing. They will take little rests like that. He'll eat a power bar. He's got that in his pocket. But all in all, I found exactly the experience I was looking for. I was only a small dot on a vast, uncaring wall, but for those 2 hours, I got to taste perfection. And that to Alex is life. This is how he lives life. And when I was reading this, I said to me, my gosh, that's life. If you live life with doubt, it ruins the experience. You cannot live it hesitant and afraid. And then I got this visual, like, what if fear and worry were like thick black smoke coming through your house, coursing through your house? Would you want that all around you?
No, of course not.
Yeah, so imagination is the opposite of thick black smoke. You have to use your imagination to create this shining path, and then you have to learn and rehearse and figure out what you have to do to stay on that. That would be your challenge. You have to weave through the problems. You have to be flexible but committed, and you have to keep the perfect mixture of aesthetics and challenge going. Like, you have to look at it as an adventure, I think. There was another climber in Alpinist magazine, winter 2014. I think it comes out seasonally. His name was Tommy Caldwell, and he's a good friend of Alex Honnold. And he says, a sixth sense seems to warn us of each loose block or hidden patch of black ice. Each footstep is sure and precise. And I thought to myself, well, maybe eliminating doubt and replacing it with mastery, because Alex talks a lot about mastery, brings you into that sixth sense. And so maybe that's what stands between us and our visions and our dreams.
These two gentlemen, they have found their niche. They have found what it is that they love to do. It's their bliss, right? So he found perfection, Alex did, and he found it in a non-conventional way, right? So this is thinking outside the box. This is going outside what I refer to as the virtual reality that's handed to us to try to have us to operate in. He went outside that. And I also love the comment that he made on the last page of your newsletter, page 12, where he said, but for all my love of simplicity, it's not always simple to get to those positions. So again, he's coming back to this common sense approach to things, very disciplined. And this is why, in my view, he's successful, because he's using his creativity, he's using his imagination, but he also has that discipline within him to make sure that it's all packaged properly. And that's why he's very good at what he does. You know, he's honed many aspects of himself, mind, body, that has created a human himself that is very, very good at what he does.
But there is also a mental transformation that goes on, I think, Mike, and this is what I admire so much. He said at one point, one of my favorite aspects of soloing, free soloing, this is no gear, nothing, all by yourself on these really freaky high slabs of granite and whatever. One of my favorite aspects is the way that pain ceases to exist. And you're going, huh? The previous 4 long days of climbing, and he climbs every day pretty much, unless it's pouring rain, had worn out my fingers and toes. But now, as I pulled on the first few holds, I felt none of the soreness. Each edge seemed perfect and crisp. Each finger lock felt like an anchor. Foot jams that had been hideously painful the previous afternoon felt rock solid. Hold after hold, I worked my way up the wall smoothly and perfectly. And so then I thought, okay, so perhaps the eradication of pain, the disappearance of pain is somehow connected to rejecting doubt. Because if you feel pain, you are going to be visited by doubt.
Exactly.
He must be able to self-opiate in a certain way, or he can really compartmentalize pain along with fear. But he says things like, it does me no good to feel doubt because it's just going to doubt or fear because it's just going to get in my way of the experience. And if I'm rehearsed enough and I know what I'm doing, should be no need for doubt, and I don't even feel pain. So that's pretty amazing. And then when you think about it, Mike, imagine if this shy little boy had been taken to the school psychologist, this little boy who wore his sweats and his hoodie to school every day, never talked to anyone. Now, they might have medicated him. People would make predictions about him like, oh, well, I mean, he has to get over the shyness. He's never going to be able to do anything in life. He can't be a hermit.
He's not, quote unquote, normal.
Yeah, he's not social. He has no social skills. But look what happened. His dad took him to a gym. It was just a Saturday afternoon thing, maybe. And he started to climb. And then he became the world's most famous, best celebrity climber. He's not shy at all. And now he is able to give back to humanity. He's a very giving person in all these different ways with his foundation. And he says things like, he talks even about his sister. And he says, I can make more money from one, ad or whatever that he does than my sister can make in 2 years. He says, this doesn't make any sense. And he goes to these poor parts of the world where people slave away for a couple of dinars, and he says it doesn't make sense that I can make this much more than they are making, and they're toiling for a year, and I'm on some mountain, somebody's making a film of me, and somebody's, got my name on their power bars. So he's aware of that discrepancy. But look what his shyness actually did for him. And so that to me is the fairy path rather than the battering ram. The battering ram would have been the school psychologists all getting together and going, well, we have to do something about this kid and his parents. But no, he found another way. The layout of his whole life was very unusual road to immense success.
But each of us has a very special path in life, Sophia, right? We have been told not to focus on our individual, that's selfish, and we should be focused more on the community aspects, the communal aspects of existence. And it's not to say that you shouldn't care about the community. I'm not saying that, but the system tries to homogenize the individual. It's like you said, the battering ram. Bring in the psychiatrists, run tests. He's not sociable, blah, 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 all that stuff. So he didn't get entrapped in that system. So he was able to break out and he was able to grow as an individual. He was able to fully explore his incarnation, his coming into this life and experiencing the things that he needed to experience life and not to be rammed into some pipe and pushed through. Like I said, I haven't read his book. I just read the newsletter, but I got a lot out of those last 5 or 6 pages of the newsletter.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, that's why I felt compelled to write about him, especially in the context of this imagination writing that I was doing. So really, the documentary is good, but the book is very, very good. Alone on the Wall. It was written with Dave Roberts, who's a mountain climbing expert and writer, and it's just a very interesting book. Anyone who reads it, I think, will get a lot out of it.
I'll put the links down below for those that are listening and are interested. Click on the links and watch the documentaries or read the books. Anything else, Sophia? Anything else you wanted to cover, even if it's what's new in the store?
Oh, I now have a liquid magnesium that doesn't send your intestinal tract into, overtime. It's called ionic magnesium. It tastes a little citrusy, but if you just squeeze the dropper, the instructions say a dropper full. It's really good to take before you go to sleep because it makes you sleep well. But yeah, that's been selling, the ionic magnesium, avatarproducts.com, and of course Restore. And we also have now the Restore product for cats and dogs. It's called LumaPet. And if you go to Restore on my website, avatarproducts.com, the health page has Restore. Right underneath will be LumaPet. And LumaPet is a version of Restore designed for the microbiome of felines and canines. It has a measure of silica in it, so that's what makes it different from the human Restore. And people with cats and dogs seem to really rave about it. Again, the dosage, according to Restore, is the same as a human, 1 tablespoon, but I don't know. Maybe you can get away with a lot less with a little cat or a little dog. You can definitely try experimenting in that regard. It costs the same as the human Restore, and I'm carrying the 16-ounce version, so 16-ounce size. So I wanted to just try that out, and if anybody is interested and wants to experiment with it, I've had a number of people write to me and say, can I give Restore to my pet? And I only was carrying the human Restore, and Restore themselves told me, yes, you can. But they've now created this silica version, and that is tailored better to the microbiome of cats and dogs. So that ionic magnesium. I'm going to be putting a page up soon about the home and electromagnetic remediation. I'm going to be carrying a full spectrum light bulb. I've already experimented. This is an LED that doesn't add dirty electricity. And it has not only an infrared component, but it's very, very long lasting. The whole other kind of LED. The reason I'm not carrying it now is because the light is very white, but the manufacturer is trying to yellow it up a little more. So I'll be bringing that in soon. They're going to be ready very soon, and they're going to be sold in bulk. You can buy a number of them. So there are these things I'm working on. Thank you, Mike, for reminding me. And as usual, iodine, magnesium, Restore, those are my go-tos.
Well, Sophia, it's been a great discussion, and it was an excellent newsletter. And what we should do is let the audience know how they can subscribe to the newsletter. That's important.
Yes, Mike, thank you. I write the newsletter monthly. I'm lagging a little behind because some of these newsletters take immense diving. I have to finish a whole book, and I go to other resources as well. So they're different. One guy wrote to me, his name is Rick, and thank you very much for this letter I just got. He renewed, and he said, it's great never knowing what you're going to talk about next. So yeah, that's how it goes. I cover all kinds of different territory. I try to get, deep into whatever I'm writing about. This is dot connecting by me. And if you want to stay abreast, people will write to me and say, what are you up to now? How can I even answer that, right? So I say to people, if you want to know that, if you really want to know, subscribe to my newsletter. And it's available by a minimum donation of $50 a year. You can give more. There are people who are enormously generous. And I usually extend those subscriptions by, make them longer as a favor. But yeah, you can email me through my store, avatarproducts.com, and you can say, how do you sign up for the newsletter? That's pretty much it. Or through my website. My blog is sofiasmallstorm.com, and I haven't done blog posts that regularly. It means if I'm not doing blog posts regularly, it just means I've dived deep into something, and it will come out in the form of a newsletter. So don't you worry.
Don't panic. You're still there. All right, Sophia, a wonderful, wonderful discussion. It was great to catch up with you again, and we'll catch up soon again. Whenever your next newsletter comes out, we can...
Yes, the next newsletter, Mike, I'm very excited about it because it is going to be about the depths of 5G that honestly nobody is talking about. And I have made special contact with the one person who taught me about it. He has a new book out, and I called him the other day, and we did a little bit of exchanging of ideas. And I'm not even going to reveal who this is, but he's a genius, and I'm very happy that he's even talking to me.
All right, very good. So we'll look forward to doing that. Well, you have a wonderful Friday, and I'll have the show out as soon as I possibly can, probably within the next 10 days or so.
Very good, Mike, and I want you to go to the climbing gym and just try to get a couple of feet off the ground.
That's not going to happen. I'll watch somebody else do it. How about that? All right, Sophia, have a great afternoon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the description box below. And as always, I would like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can find all my social media and web links by visiting my hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to check out my music and album releases. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone with the next show. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.
Sometimes I feel so tired, but today I feel so wired. And I look through my crystal ball. All I see is that wall. So many people are standing still, drifting away. They lost their will. I just want to shake them and give them ears. Wake up, stop living in fear. You are human. You are a beautiful soul. You are one with creation. Come on, get up, let's go. Sometimes I feel so cheated, but today I won't be defeated. I cut the chains and I break free. Open your eyes and you will see. You are human. You are a beautiful You are a beautiful soul.